All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pull white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Sebo?
We've got Knife of Dreams. Should be our last one on this book. And then we'll go on to the Sanderson stuff after that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we'll zip through. Like I was just skimming through, and we're on chapter 28, and we've got three chapters here that wraps up Perrin and Fael's storyline here with the Shido, and I don't really have a lot to say about it except it was I recall at the time of reading it for the first time and in every subsequent reread, it has been a very unsatisfying conclusion. And I'm not sure how much of that is the conclusion itself and how much of it was the slog to get here. That we went through all of that just to get this is kind of my feelings on it on these several chapters. Um I also don't know how much the death of poor Rolan is um tragic for all the wrong reasons. Tragic because of the meta, tragic because of all the uh, idiotic hate about him. And how much was it was such a slog to get there. It should have been more horrifically tragic in the moment. And
Mhm.
I just kind of remember feeling like,
Well, we've got a comment on that from the last episode. Uh, I think people dislike Roland because it feels like he's subtly pressuring Fael sexually. He's like the spider with a fly. The spider has all the time in the world for the fly to surrender. He can be patient. And that is the objection from the feminist crowd of why they hate Roland because he just doesn't give up. That's the thing. But then the flip side of that is those same women are the ones going, where are all the good guys at? The good guys are the ones that don't give up, but don't force things. He is
yep,
trying to be charming. He is trying to be funny. He is trying to win her over. He has never used his power to do it. Yeah, he does have all the time in the world because of the situation, but he's not taking advantage of anything but the time.
yes,
And if you're going to say taking advantage of the time is a spider chasing the fly, no, the spider eventually uses the web, or the spider itself makes the web. She's in another web. He's another fly in that web.
you know what we used to call subtle, persistent pressure? The art of seduction, which used to be a good thing because
Well,
that was the
remember
man putting in the effort.
remember the old advice to girls: play hard to get, because then you only get the serious men.
Mm-hmm.
And if they give up right after you say no for the first time, they're probably the one night standers anyways.
You know, I just remembered another reason I didn't like it in the initial read through the whole Roland fail storyline is I really thought she was going to give in. And I thought, oh geez, no, this is going to be terrible. And I thought she was going to, as
It,
she said
and your
last time.
suspicions are well founded because it
Yeah,
would have been terrible but human.
yeah. It
And
it
and then all the hate that Fail would have gotten, I would be defending her now if
it
it had
would,
played out that way.
as we talked about last time, because of what she says in her own mind when we were in her perspective in that chapter of she had to be rigid in her you know uh uh insistence that she would not give an inch, not even a kissing game was what we were talking about, was the chapter last time, because she was afraid, or I think she said she knew if she started down that path she wouldn't be able to stop herself.
Yeah, not because he's forcing, but because
So
she deep down wanted it. That was the
and
implication there.
and because of, as she put it, her honor, her, or no, I think her virtue, she wouldn't leave with her virtue intact. That would have destroyed her as a person. She would have given in the moment because on a human, um, emotional level, it would have felt right in the moment, but the core of her would have seen that as wrong, and it would have destroyed her as a person, and then destroyed Perrin as a person because of how much he has wrapped up his whole life in Fail.
Hmm. Well, but we also know from what happens here in a little bit, she's willing to do things behind his back that are for his own good. So the fact he would probably never have learned about it, especially since Roland ends up dead. So it's as the little pact with all the other girls, they probably did stuff.
Oh, we know they did because
We know, yeah,
she
we know they did stuff,
we
but
don't know who
nobody's
did what
going to
with
know
whom,
because they've
but
made they've then spit and shook over it. Although you get from inside Fail's head, there is that knowledge that she would use if she has to. And I bet you all the other women that stayed to their virtue are play have the same
mhm.
basically blackmail material if they need it. So you basically got a group of people. I bet you that whole group of people just assumes everybody else did. I bet you all the other girls think Fail did.
Well, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we see later it did affect Fael and Perrin's relationship because um it was still um it was still a drag on her conscience. And so, had she actually given in, it would have been even worse, and it would have made their relationship even more tense and awkward. So, even if she never said anything, I still think it would have destroyed Perrin. And it kind of does because well, I don't want to get too far into it because we'll get there when we get there. But there seems to be a subtext in the next book that Perrin suspects stuff happened and basically thinks and says as much of, whatever happened, whatever you had to do, it's in the past and let's forget about it. But it still eats at him. Um, I do, getting back to this book, I think the finale here with Roland would have been more tragic, satisfyingly tragic. It is an odd way to phrase it, but that's the way it is with good storytelling.
Well, I mean, it's the
It
definition of tragedy.
if we would have gotten more from the other women, specifically the two that
Mm,
stab their Aiel, their brotherless in the back, to prevent them from stepping in and fighting Perrin, and that had to hurt, but we don't really know those characters very well. The characters who did that, and I think the had it not been such a slog to get here in the first place, and had Jordan taken away some of the slog to give us a chance, even just a couple of pages break in Fael's chapters, take a couple of pages to break and give us someone else's perspective, give us some of their perspective, so we would get to know them. It would have made that moment so much more impactful.
hmm well, another thing that bothers me about the tragedy of the Roland end is Fael makes a massive assumption about him leading up to this moment that he would have stopped her had he learned of the escape plan.
Mm,
But we get, I think the lead up to this moment, even though we never get his mind's eye perspective, I doubt he would have.
mm.
I think he would have facilitated. He wouldn't have broke them out. Otherwise, he would have done
Well,
that a long time ago. But he would have been like Bane and Shade. He would have been like, you know what? If you're going to do this full thing, we'll just make sure you don't get hurt in the process.
he was already halfway there. Uh, in the I think it's the previous book where he brings up that he and his fellow brotherless are thinking about returning uh to the threefold land, and he wants her to go with him. So he's already halfway there of getting her out of that situation. Um, all right, well,
Well, this
that,
is, I mean, I hate to, we've defended Fael a lot in this reread
mhm,
compared to our first impressions as young men.
yeah.
But I do have to point out that it was interesting to me, minor detail seemingly, but not so minor to me, with her dealing with Bane and Chaid. She they're talking about Toe to each other, blah 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 blah. But she's asking this honor culture person to lie for her
Mhm.
and to be deceitful for her. It, and they're justifying it in their own head because, oh, they're wetlanders. But it's still a lie. It's still deceit. It's still
Mhm.
against an honor culture that he has built up. And I don't know if he did it on purpose here or if he just kind of slipped his own Jito kind of uh world for a second to kind of push the story forward. But it's the female honor goes as far as their feels, right? You know, I feel this is right, so therefore I'm going to justify this decision. And that kind of hit me as a little contrast in the story. Uh,
I will say one of the um redeeming highlights of these chapters, I think, is that Magdin kind of gets a couple moments to shine, and Morgase has been very annoying for a long time.
mhm.
Um,
Well, and
and
I think there's a failure on Fael's part that she keeps saying, "Oh, I know she was something more, or she's got a strong spirit, or whatever." But she if she's as intuitive as we're supposed to think she is at this
mhm,
moment, her bullshit meter should have been just flaming red at this
yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, so because Magden is the one who picks up that one of the other Gaishane,
Hmm.
Wetlander Gaishane is lying and is going to betray them. Um,
Oh yeah, that was a point I did want to make about her. Her being able to read people so well
mhm,
is actually something that we could have used more of with her dealings with Pedron Nial and
mhm, mhm,
Asunawa and all of those different people.
yeah. Um, you
Even with
know,
her, even her with her dealings with Balwer, because we have this super spy that she could have figured out because she's awesome at reading people. You know.
that's a good point. I just had another thought here that's kind of um uncomfortable, but would have made for a better human story is take out some of the slog and give us some more Magdin, even if not from her point of view, but her trying to help the other women through this, because it hadn't really occurred to me before. She's already been through this.
Hmm.
And we saw this um uh with the very opening, with the prologue. It was referenced here with Valda um basically admitting to uh Galad that, yeah, I raped your mom, so what? So she's already been through this and worse. So she could have and should have been
She
a
was mentally enslaved by a Forsaken, and she knows it.
she I don't think she knows at this point that it was a Forsaken,
Oh, okay.
but she knew that something was that she acted incomprehensibly.
Hmm.
She knew that she was manipulated, and had her basically her kingdom pulled out from under her. And
Yeah, but
then
she has to know there was something supernatural involved
she
because she
should
has
have
no
known because she
memories
knows
of
the
the
power.
things that were
Yeah.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about that back when she kind of woke up and got out of it. Is one of our, minor quibbles was it's hard to believe that someone tower trained and someone this
Wouldn't at least
smart
suspect the power, especially
wouldn't
with all these men popping up everywhere.
wouldn't
Yeah.
eventually get to that point, at least. Yeah. If not know it in the moment, it eventually figure it out.
Or at least
But
suspect some sort of poison.
but back to this, it would have really humanized Morgase, but also shown us uh like given her a moment to shine of, yeah, she's not a queen anymore, but she can still lead by, you know, using her past experience and her past trauma to help others get through it. All right, but anyway, so they sneak off to Malden. They get betrayed by Galena, and then Magdad uses the power to say, "Hey, here we are." Or well, that's where it leaves off. Is that's what she's doing. But then we
Mhm.
switch to Perrin and all the nonsense there. So we've kind of skipped ahead to Roland, but before we get there is Perrin and Perrin and the Tinker with a Sword, which we've been teased with for a long time
Mhm.
of that dream and that vision of this is important.
Yeah.
That was another,
Chopping through the brambles or something, right?
yeah, hacking their way through brambles towards a cliff that they don't know is there was one of the visions, one of the dreams that Egwene had. Uh, and I believe Min had a vision of a tinker with a sword. No, that was an early dream of
That was
Egwene's.
Egwene's. Yeah.
Yeah, she saw a tinker with a sword, and even though she had met Aram, she didn't know who it was. Yeah, and there you go. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And again, though, that was another one that fizzled. I mean, maybe there's something that he thinks or says in the next book that we can keep an eye out for that kind of brings that back, but it seemed to happen so fast. Well, not seem to. It happened so fast, and it was such a an odd and unsatisfying fight. I mean, basically, you know, basically Perrin is alive by pure luck that Aram didn't kill him. Uh, I mean, we know it would have been hard for Perrin to kill him, but also on the other hand, imagine the kind of the kind of mirror there of he has to kill Aram and he's racked with that guilt, and he does kill Rolan, and he's not racked with any guilt because he doesn't know what's going on, but Fail is the one racked with guilt there. You know, that I felt that the end of Aram and that storyline was another kind of fizzle that kind of missed.
Hmm. Yeah, especially since they really didn't go towards any cliff either.
Mm-hmm.
They go in there hacking and slashing, and then Aram betrays him, and then he has to kill him. And what was the cliff?
The only thing I can think on that is that um
Maybe parents' humanity, maybe.
it was early on, right after Fayo got captured, and he's manic, and
Mm.
he's acting irrationally. And he was kind of rushing his people towards a cliff if he hadn't have slowed down and had people tell him, "You need to chill out because this threat is bigger than we thought it was, and we're all going to die if we go rushing into it."
Well, maybe the cliff is Massima, because Massimo is why Aram betrayed
That's a thought.
Perrin to begin with. So if the cliff is Massima, then that is the downfall of their relationship. It's the downfall of ultimately Aram's life and Perrin's humanity inside because now he's racked with this guilt.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, yeah. All right. So it's 650. I was just looking for it, and this is one of the few times where I feel like Jordan goes a little too far with the Deus Ex Machina and the contrivances. And the Aram darted in, sword chopping down. Suddenly he stiffened, eyes going wide, and the blade dropped from his hands. He toppled forward to lie on his face, two arrows jutting from his back. It just felt like a cheesy movie or TV show where the hero is about to die and just amazingly gets saved by a stroke of luck.
Mm-hmm.
It was way too much like that. I would have much rather Perrin have been forced to kill Aram. Um,
or something that would have fit there is not just two arrows, but it have been someone like Gaul watching his back or
Mm,
Elias. Had it been somebody who might have been suspecting Aram this whole time, maybe even had
yeah,
been throwing in warning signs like, "Hey, your boy's spending too much time with Massimo over there." And had it been one of those and not just a random stroke of luck.
yeah, yeah. That's a good point too. That would have worked, and also would have, especially if it was like if it was Elias, because there would have been because Elias knew him. Elias had known Aram for a long time. Probably when he was probably since he was a boy.
Yeah,
And
that
so
would have been that would have added to the tragedy.
for Elias to have done that, and then as Perrin's mentor, and we got kind of a hint of that when Elias first shows up, and he says something to the effect of "You did the boy no favors,"
hmm
um, because now that
Yeah,
now the
and then
sword
and
is
then
all he has.
some sort of empathetic "I told you so" after the act.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, the backhanded compliment, like you cared for the boy, but he headed down this path when he picked up that sword or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you know what? It also, I think, um, so just down from that on that very same page, and again, this may have been part of the
What page was that again?
650.
Okay.
This may have been part of the problem with this climax is there is no room to breathe. The you have two huge moments back to back here on a single page, and you just don't have any room to process. You don't have any room to let it breathe, to get inside Perrin's head a little bit. But I suspect that as we're talking about it and I'm thinking out loud here, that part of the reason he rushes in berserker mode here, with a roar, Perrin rushed forward, raising his hammer, and the huge man flung Fael back and ran toward him, spear coming up as the plucked his buckler from his belt. Perrin Fael screamed. The big Shido seemed to hesitate for a heartbeat, and Perrin took advantage of it. And he smashes his hammer hit the side of the man's head so hard that his feet left the ground as he fell. Um, he's already emotionally raw because of it's been 40 something days, 40 days since Faya was lost. And now he's had to deal with the death of Ram. And I feel like it would have been more impactful if we would have had a few pages here. And if it would have been either him or like we said, Elias who killed Aram, and he's already kind of he's once again spiraling into his own head, and then this bestial roar that he lets out, and just he's not even thinking about the situation. He's not even uh there is absolutely no hesitation. There's no get away from my wife. There's no words, there's no what's going on. And it never registers to him that when Fail shouts out that the Aiel hesitates.
hmm
There's no thought of why. Well, if he's already on tilt because of Ram, on top of the fact that he came into this kind of crazy because of Fail, I feel like that would have worked better.
So we talk about what's supposed to be the tragedy of Roland's death. Here's the real tragedy, and this is why woke ruins everything. There's a whole generation of readers that will read this and hate Roland because of what we talked about in the beginning, and that good stories are good because of the feelings you get from them. And we just spent a whole book where I think Jordan was purposefully trying to get you to like Roland
Mm-hmm.
and be pissed off at Perrin. And we call it the slog because you keep getting pissed off at Perrin, but I think Jordan did that on purpose.
For this book, for sure.
Yeah, he's trying to get you to like Roland and to be a little bit ticked off at Perrin. And then when Perrin kills Roland, you're just going, oh.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a whole generation of readers that are taught that you're not allowed to pursue a female past the first, you
Well,
know.
add to the problematic part of this, the next page here, um, when Perrin and Fael embrace, did they hurt you? He asked gently. No, Perrin, they didn't hurt me. There were other smells mixed in with her joy, though, laced through it inextricably. The dull, aching scent of sadness. And I love the way, because how do you describe an emotion as a scent? And so I love the way he phrases this. The greasy aroma of guilt. Shame like thousands of hair fine needles pricking. Well, the man was dead, and a woman had the right to keep her secrets if she wanted. So, adding to the tragedy of all of this is that Perrin thinks he knows why Fael is feeling guilty, but he doesn't actually know. But it would bring up too much
No,
shame and problems if he asked her.
he thinks and does know. He's just a guy. And so in his mind, it's the act that's important. When in her mind, it's the emotion that's important.
Exactly.
She did have an affair. She became emotionally attached to Rolan.
And I think that's part of the reasons it's additionally problematic in today's stupid age is that, well,
It's all about sex. Yeah,
she
yeah.
has nothing to feel guilty for. No, she does. You know, she did feel a kinship, an attachment to this person. He was a likable person.
In
He
fact,
was an ally.
the way people the way it's portrayed now with this whole boss bitch, rings of power type heroine, had she used sex to her advantage here, she would have been celebrated.
Oh, good
She's
point.
just a woman doing what she has to do. She won the day because she got what she wanted.
That's a good point.
So
And
people are completely missing this extremely emotional moment. One of the most, unfortunately, at the end of a slog, one of the most
mhm.
impactful moments of this book.
Yup. Which we'll have more to talk about in the next book because that's when he starts to or was going to, and then Sanderson has to unpack that this short paragraph of unpack that feeling of guilt and why that is there and what that means and what the consequences of that are going to be. And then they figure out that Galena must have been black because she straight up lied. Um, and then that is that. And then at least Galena gets what she's due here with the last page and a half of the chapter, and Galena gets caught by Tharava and and gets to, you know, have a sucky life for all the terrible things she's done. Uh and then that is that for Perrin's chapter. So there are those three. If there's anything else that jumps out to anyone else there that we didn't talk about, to me, that's kind of the highlight and the big takeaway from these three chapters.
Yeah,
Those thoughts.
yeah. It is the big disappointment that not only did there was a little bit of a fumble on what could have been done to make some things more impactful, including a storyline that's been there since book. When did Aram come in? Book 4? When did he come
Well,
in to Perrin's
yeah,
storyline?
we
Yeah,
first meet him in book frickin' 1,
yeah,
and
but
then in
where
book
where he
4
picks up the sword is book 4.
is when we meet the Tinkers again, and Aram picks up the sword.
So we have six books of storyline that is supposed to be one of the most impactful in Perrin's arc, come to a kind of a wah wah at the end. And this is on Jordan's watch. This is in this book. This is in his writing. It's not Sanderson. We can't blame him.
Mm-hmm.
And now there might have been some rush to it. Maybe he was rushed because of the situation, but uh, yeah, I think that and then the tragedy that there's a whole generation of people that don't understand what Jordan was trying to accomplish with the
Hmm.
Roland and Perrin slog.
Right. Well,
It,
speaking
it's a
of,
little less of a slog if you think about it that way, because one of the reasons we
yeah.
call the Perrin story arc is the slog is also another comment is he takes one step forward and two steps back. But I think Jordan wanted you to not like Perrin for a little bit.
Hmm.
I think he wanted you to be frustrated with him. I think he wanted you to start liking Roland more than Perrin in parts.
Yeah. I feel like the slog would have been a lot less of a slog if, because you can break the slog up into two parts. There is the first part of Perrin's storyline in Geldan, and then there's everything after Fio gets captured by the Shido. And really, it's, and I think we talked about this when it first started, is the kind of resetting and regression of Perrin and Fio's relationship. That part was a very annoying slog. And I think we said at the time when we were first talking about it, it makes what comes after much less impactful. Because if they had been in the good place they should have been, the good place they
Hmm.
were after Dumai's Wells, then her capture would have been that much more impactful.
Yeah, and I think Barrelane is distracted from everything in the story, and I think that
Mhm.
made it kind of the way it was too. Because I know it was again, it was a part of you were supposed to not, you're supposed to be mad at Perrin, but we knew from Perrin's point of view that he actually didn't do anything.
Mhm.
Had he done something, then it might have been more impactful. So I think because he didn't actually do anything, you just got the aftermath of people thinking he did. Then you
He
don't
didn't,
you don't you don't have any animosity towards him. You have
right.
animosity towards everybody who's sowing the seeds of the deception.
Well, exactly. And here's the, I mean, this is probably again why Jordan is problematic, is that not only did he not do anything, he never thought about doing anything. He was never tempted to do anything with Barrelane. Faya was tempted to do something with Roland.
Hmm.
Yep. Partly for good reason because he was in a shit
Well, she
situation,
wasn't
but
tempted, but
still,
she knew the temptation could arise if she
yes,
let her defenses down.
that's
So
probably a better
so
way to
so
put it. Yeah.
she put up walls instead of boundaries. But let's look at their relationship in full. What pisses Fael most about off about Perrin?
His apologetic nature.
When he gets apologetic, when he's like, "Oh yeah, I was wrong." Da, 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 da. What is the thing that's quote unquote problematic about Roland? He keeps trying.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you missed this advance? Okay, well let me tell a better joke or let me do this. It's the exact opposite. It's like, oh, I told a joke and you didn't do anything. Oh, I'm sorry, did I go too far?
Mm-hmm.
That's what the little the wokies that write these reviews want him to do there. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I offend you? I'm sorry. I won't go down that road again. No, he kept trying. And that's actually what Fail loves.
Mm-hmm.
Fail loves a guy who's persistent. Fail loves a guy
Yeah.
who knows what he wants.
Well, and I'd never thought about it until you brought it up. I think it was the last time we were recording that you brought up that Roland is, because I was just kind of seeing the base level similarities, the fact that they're both very big dudes, So in that way, he's very much like Perrin. Um, but he's very much not like Perrin when it comes to that part of his personality, which is the part that Fail, gets frustrated by, and that had to have been on purpose on Jordan's part. Is that this is why he is alluring. This is why she's thinking about it because he is so much like her husband, except for this one thing that drives her crazy.
Hmm. Well, it drove her crazy in another way. It drove her kind of
And then
giddy
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of boss bitches, ugh,
Elaine, yay.
now we get to Elaine, and this is
This is a bigger slog to me than I think. You know
yes,
what? The
yes,
Perrin slog is more sloggy because he combined it at the same time as the Elaine slog.
and I seem to recall that in the moment when I was first reading it, to me it wasn't as much of a slog because I kept expecting something different to happen. I kept expecting eventually Elaine is going to have her come to Jesus moment. Eventually, she's going to have, in much the same way that she had when Matt finally showed who he really was and saved her life from certain death. that she said, I have completely misjudged you. I was wrong. Not only was I wrong about your character, I was wrong in my arrogance that we could just come do this and take care of it and everything's fine. And we got our butts handed to us and people died and I almost died.
Hmm.
She never has that moment here with Birgitte in this whole time she's in Camelin and trying to gain the throne. Specifically when it comes to the Black Ajah, because now we have, much like with Perrin, we've got 3 chapters here of Elaine wrapping up her storyline, and the big part of it is they finally find the house where the Black Ajah are hanging out, and they go to ambush them, full well knowing that at least one of them is black. At least one of them one of the Aes Sedai there is a traitor going to betray them. So, however much you think you've got the element of surprise here, and to her credit, they do. It just happened to be that a couple of Black Sisters showed up when they weren't expected and ambushed the ambushers. But still, you're going to be attacked from 2 sides because you've got the Black Sisters in the house in front of you, and you've got the one that you don't know who it is in your midst.
Hmm.
And it leads to the death of Aes Sedai, who had basically been following her. That she was their leader and she led them to their death. She gets hundreds of her loyal guardsmen, and she doesn't have that many. That what's his bucket Gaiban brings in. Hundreds of them get killed in trying to rescue her, and at no point do you see the slightest bit of contrition on her part. Birgitte is kind of her conscience here of,
Hmm.
you can't keep acting like this. You can't keep doing this. Bad things are going to happen. And so I felt like when I was first reading it, I kept expecting her to finally heed her conscience, to finally listen to Jiminy Cricket.
Hmm. I was just going to use Jiminy Cricket for Brigitte, but
And and and
no.
that's why the Pinocchio story works, is because eventually Pinocchio goes into, and I was kind of surprised the first time I heard Jordan Peterson brings this up a lot of Pinocchio as a morality tale, especially when he goes to the island and
Hmm.
all this terrible stuff is happening. And he eventually, the reason it works as a morality tale is because he learns his lesson. And that's why ultimately he's rewarded in the end, because he learned his lesson. Elaine never learns her lesson. And some really bad stuff happens in these chapters.
Well, and this is where we do get a little payoff from a long story. Is Vandine has her moment.
The best part of these chapters is that Van Deen goes out like, speaking of boss bitches, she goes out like a real boss.
Yeah, yeah.
Not like the modern day strong female character. No, she goes out like a boss. She has her moment. It is by far the best part of this storyline's finish. Um, do you have any more thoughts before we get to Birgitte also has her moment. So after all the terrible crap happens in chapter 31, and then we switch to Birgitte's point of view, and then all the other warders go crazy because their Aes Sedai gets killed, and she's the one that keeps her head and says, "Oh crap, I can't do this by myself. I'm not going to do this with psycho warders who've just had their bonds snapped. I have to do what I've been telling Elaine to do, which is think this crap through and do it the smart way." Do it the way that doesn't put your life in unnecessary, your life and the lives of other, which is the biggest gripe about Elaine, is how many other people she gets killed. Don't put don't put your and the people who follow yours lives in unnecessary amounts of danger without a strong prospect of victory. That's what Brigitte does here. Is she walks the walk. All this stuff that she's been telling Elaine, that's what chapter 32 basically is to me, is all of this stuff she's been telling Elaine, she is now going to show rather than tell, because she's going to do it herself.
Yeah, and she masterfully handles the sea folk windfinders,
Exactly.
which is what we've been waiting for a while as we've been bitching and moaning about him. Just this statement alone, you only need do what you want. That's not a new bargain. This other person's trying to
Hmm.
get her to commit to a new bargain. And she's like, only do what you want. But here's the repercussions of if you don't do anything, you do what you want.
Hmm.
And they have to come through with no new strings attached.
Yeah. I didn't realize, I don't think I realized until the second reread how many guardsmen Gaibon took through with him and thus how many died. I mean, I didn't realize until I think the second reread. Oh, wait, he took thousands with him. He took a couple thousand guys with him
Mm-hmm.
and lost like a third of them. I think when Brigitti's asking Gaibon how many are how many casualties, I want to say it's like a third. It's a lot of guys died without ever even having a chance to attack the enemy because of how they were being attacked.
Yeah, it was basically Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
The opening scene from Saving Private Ryan.
Mm-hmm.
Open the gate. Pa, 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 pa.
Yep. Yep. And you're not even remotely close to the bad guys yet. Uh, and then what throws a wet blanket on everything here is then at the beginning of chapter 33 is this is what's so frustrating about chapter 33 is that Elaine's not wrong here. That she has her moment of wait a minute, she's a smart gal and she figures out thinks through the things that we found out earlier and she realizes the 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 claimant that's against me is going to be here in this assault. If we attack them from the rear, we can end this. She's not wrong. The problem is she never shows the slightest bit of contrition. She never shows the slightest bit of sympathy. What would have been better, I feel like what would have, as cheesy as it sounds, what would have salvaged this moment for me is I just complained about the dorky, movie TV show contrivance where the hero accidentally wins. But I do think a movie contrivance here would have worked, which is the motivating speech. You know, you give the motivating speech in Independence Day or Mr. Smith Goes to Washington or whatever, and you have that motivating speech, and then the good guys win. That actually would have worked for me. That actually would have salvaged this for me. Is Elaine not just commanding and being an imperious boss bitch, but saying, I know you took casualties. I know I put you here, but now we have the chance to do this. Follow me. Rather than just being everything we hate about Egwene, which is the totalitarian, the dictator,
Mm-hmm.
rather than the leader. That's really all the thoughts I have on Elaine's storyline, because otherwise it's like, okay, she's queen now. Good for her.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say the not only is she does not have any uh post nut clarity in the situation, she uh, all her efforts it should be even doubly so because all of her try to make everybody happy for the last whole book. Thousands died. Thousands will die if I don't do
Mm-hmm.
this. Thousands will die if I don't do this. Well, then I did this stupid thing and thousands died.
Mm-hmm.
When she could have led something right off the bat and hundreds have died.
Mm-hmm. Um.
Or I should say she should have listened to Brigitte right off the bat and hundreds would have died. It's just like
Oh, you
our
know what?
it's just like our thing with Egwene. Should she have listened to Brine and finished it right then or do the way she did? And who knows? Because the Sean should. Oh, spoilers. Never mind. But
Shh.
things get crazy later. And would they have been in a good position? We don't know. But that's a Black Swan event. That's not a predictable event. Brian was right in the predictable world.
Okay, here we go. This is what I was looking for was so on page 697, what's the butcher's bill, Guybun? Birgitti asked, because Elaine has finished her bitchiness here and said, we're gonna go, rather than inspiring and leading. I don't have a full tally my yet, lady. Some of the bodies, I'd say as many as 5 or 600 dead, though, perhaps a few more. Twice as many wounded one way or another. um as nasty a few minutes as I've ever seen. So I think your analogy of the opening scene of Saving Private Ryan is perfect here of yeah, it's just a couple of minutes and you have lost 5 or 600 dead, uh and then 1,000 to 1,200 wounded who can't fight anymore, um just in a couple of minutes. And there's no thank you for your service, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And what really put the nail in the coffin for me of why in subsequent reads this slog became even worse than Perrin's slog is so I was looking for the casualty numbers and how many. It wasn't even several thousand, it was 10,000 is how many men he has left. uh, so that's what they're going to attack, and they're still outnumbered, but it's still good tactically, and there are historical examples of it, of what they're going to do here. But when I was looking for that, what I accidentally turned to was the top of page 968. And to me, this is what finishes off Elaine as a sympathetic protagonist, which is her snarky reply to Brigitte, who's basically just saying, we didn't lose hundreds of people so that you could get yourself killed trying to be a damned hero when you're supposed to be a leader. And her snarky, sarcastic reply of, why, that was exactly my plan, Elaine said sweetly. However, did you guess? Shut up. This is, I may have to go digging through the searchable database of Jordan interviews and Q&As, just on Elaine, and see what he says about Elaine, because I genuinely want to know what he was trying to do here. Were you trying to make her unsympathetic? Because you did.
Well, I do think there is a bit of that with Jordan because he loves things to be, even in a fantastic world, realistic.
Mm,
And he created flaws in all of his characters.
mhm.
You know, it just so happened that we all love Matt because his flaws are kind of trivial,
And
but
adorable.
and adorable. Yeah, you know,
But
it
to your point, you've made this point several times, is that the perfect, the perfection of that though was Nynaeve, because we didn't like her, and we weren't alone in our fellow nerds who did not like Nynaeve early on.
well, because we were teenage boys and we all hated our moms because they were trying to make us, be disciplined
That
and sit
that's
in
a
our
great
chairs
point.
and, but now we're adult men who appreciate a strong female who's not woke, right?
When she
A
first
real
shows up
strong female.
in
Yeah.
oh, I just brain farted. The town they go to, the mining town,
Berlin.
Barrelon. When she first shows up, she is a scolding mom. And and even through the tower, the way she acts when her, Egwene, and Elaine are together on their adventures, and then her and Elaine, she's very annoying. She's not very sympathetic, but the more you read her, the more you get to know her and who she really is and why she does the things she does. And she becomes one of the strongest characters and one of the most sympathetic characters in the entire storyline.
Well, and when you maybe now because I have more expertise in this area, when you read her as a teenage boy or even a young man, you think of her as like the overbearing mother.
Mm.
But when you actually know what the overbearing mother is, the overbearing mother is the coddling mother.
Hmm.
And she is not the coddling
That's
mother.
a great point.
She is the disciplined, learn your lesson, move on mother.
Hmm.
Where a comment from the last episode that Scott made 2 episodes ago he made that we addressed in the last episode. Egwene is always trying to account for everything and protect everybody and do this and da 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 da. She's the overbearing mother.
You know what Nynaeve is? She's the coach that you hated when he was your coach, and then afterwards you loved him
Mm-hmm.
because
Because you realize the things he taught you.
he
Yeah.
was hard ass. He rode you. He pushed you, but he taught you. You know, there are coaches who are just hard asses
Where as an
because
adult, you see
they
the
think that's what
lesson.
they're supposed
You
to
see
do.
the lesson
Yes,
behind the
yes,
discipline. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
You realize that he wasn't just hard on you. He was also teaching you.
Well, I can give a direct example because I just read my son's reviews from his counselors at school, and I felt like I was looking in a mirror. It was intelligent, bright, all these things, but argues with the teacher about doing homework because I already know the material. Why should I have to do the assignment? That was me. That was me in third grade with the teacher that a lot of people didn't like was Miss Sims. Were you around when did you move
Okay,
to
you
Germany?
brought that up last time, and it made me feel old and forgetful and confused. Mrs. Sims was my teacher in third grade. That's when I got
Yeah, the
there.
third
Was
grade.
in
Yeah,
third
we were
grade.
the
I
third
did
grade.
not
Yeah.
remember being in the same class in third grade.
Well, because that was the first year you started rotating some classes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't think we were in the same homeroom, but I had her for vocabulary or whatever, which
Okay.
vocabulary was the subject that I was like, I know the words, I know the definitions. I don't have to do this assignment where you write
Yeah.
them 10 times each. And I took home an F because the assignments were worth a grade and the quizzes were only worth a certain percentage of the grade, which was not enough to pass you if you didn't do the assignments. And I got my ass beat. And but what I didn't know is fast forward to college. Because, this is not bragging. This is just the way some people are. High school, I didn't have to study.
Hmm.
Grade school, like I said, I knew the words. I didn't know the words at the time. She was teaching me how to study.
Hmm.
And when I got to calculus, advanced calculus in college, which I failed my first semester because I would open the book and stare at it and go, is this studying? I have no idea how to study. I have no study habits
Hmm.
because when things got hard, I had no good habits. And then it took about 2 years to kind of get over that and grow up. And then I looked back and I was like, Miss Sims was teaching me how to study. And the person I hated then is, I will call her one of my favorite teachers in the career of my being in education because she was trying to teach me this useful skill. And I was a stubborn little prick. And you first read Nynaeve, you're the stubborn little prick as if you were our age when we did it.
Yeah.
But now we're adults and we're like,
I get it.
she's Miss Sims,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's pause there because we're finally to the good stuff, which is we finish up with Matt. So, uh, I need to I need to go old man pee, and you need to put your hat on.
Yeah.
All right. Jump cut to suddenly Sam has a hat, but that's because we are building up to. I've been thinking about because I've mentioned a couple of times of one of my top five moments in the whole series, and we're building up to one of those here. Uh, I've had to I've been trying to think about it of, well, can I actually list them? But I would have to say that two of my favorite scenes in the entire series are in this book because I would put Nynaeve, going to the merchant there in Arafel or wherever she was. And I that to me is one of the greatest scenes in the whole series. And I think the climax of Matt's story here is right up there.
I'm trying to think what I would put as the top of my list. Matt and Jylen going into the Stone of Tear is probably one of my favorites. That's tough. I'll have to think about that. I don't know if I share the same sentiment on Nine Even going to RFL, but just because she goes out of character to me there. She's a little manipulative. She's usually a little more direct.
No, see, I see her as pretty direct of
Oh,
you know.
no, she's direct to the Airfelon, but she's not direct to land in that point.
Oh no, yeah, no, no, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so chapter 34. A cup of cough. God, I could use a cup of cough, but I should have made myself one while we were paused there. Um,
Yeah, I'll probably have one because I gotta go to a game night tonight, which is why I'm wearing my my gaming shirt. So,
um,
and I figured that fit with Perrin and Rolan.
so the thing I love about this chapter is that again, show don't tell. When Matt, you know, last we
See,
saw
last
Matt,
time I did that, they called me a flasher, but
last we saw Matt, he was as his general said, he's planning us a campaign because a battle's not good enough. And Jordan showed us the opening salvo of that campaign with Matt in his ambush, and then we don't see any of the rest of it. Well, because we don't need to. Instead, what he shows us, much the same way H.P. Lovecraft works, because he never tells you about the
he's
monster.
so good.
And,
Yeah.
and the reason Lovecraft doesn't translate well to games and screen is because you have to show the monster. But Lovecraft just tells you the effects of the monster on the person who's seeing it. And that's basically what Jordan does here, is rather than telling us about Matt's campaign, he's showing us the effects of that campaign with this general who's trying to figure out what the hell is going on and how to respond to it. And then on top of that, Furik Karede, or however you pronounce his name, I mentioned this when we first saw him. I think last book is when he first shows up, or is it Winter's Heart? I can't remember when the searcher goes to meet him. He is instantly a fully formed and sympathetic character, and this just finishes it off here of how awesome he is. These couple of chapters here, um, where first here where he shows up, and he's trying to play the political. So he is kind of badass in the way people treat him, the way people react around him. But then you see he can also play the political game that you have to play. So I've mentioned before that my dad was in the army, retired as a full bird colonel after 23 years. And the reason he retired, he didn't have to yet. He could have kept going. But the reason he retired is because he had done every duty station that he could. And at his rank, the only duty station left for him was the Pentagon. He refused to go to Washington. So I said, you know what? I've been in 23 years. It's time to retire because I'm not going to Washington. Because yeah, that's why a lot of people, you talk to a lot of vets. We've had Chuck on, our friend, the affable gentleman, and the reason he got out is because he loved his job. But the problem is, he puts it with the military, the army, is it's either up or out. Well, he didn't want to move up. He didn't want he would rather have just stayed where he was for, years, rather than being promoted up and on. And that's the way it works in the military is. And so a lot of people, you know what, they're great at their job, but I don't want to have to play the politics. And
Hmm.
eventually, that's in any organization, you get high enough in the bureaucracy and it becomes political. And that's what this guy's having to deal with is, I'm trying to find the air, and we don't get a hint here. I'm not sure if news has reached
Some of
these
that's not
people
like
that the
politics
Empress
like
is dead.
we complain about though, because I've
Yes,
moved up
yes,
in everything I've ever done. That's why I decided I should own a business because I'm kept just moving up in management in everywhere I went. It's just at some point when you get to a certain point moving up, you're dealing with enough people under you. You have to be more political
yes,
in your
yes,
dealings with them. When I was in charge of 15 coaches, it was a lot different than when I just had a couple people that had to answer to me. And then when I became the director of the fitness program, and I had to not only deal with 20 coaches, but also the sales manager and
Hmm.
the front desk person and the all of these other people. Yeah, you end up splitting your ability or your energy, uh, energy used very loosely as a term, through all of these different facets of your being. And that's basically the definition of politics, because
And,
you're trying to balance the ratio of everything and get the right thing done.
and the reason Jordan is such a great writer is because he's able to show that rather than tell that when you see Furyk's thought process here as he's trying to deal with this guy, because they're of basically an equal rank. I think the way he describes it is that a Death Watch guard is like a half rank above somebody else. It could basically pull rank on anyone
Hmm.
if if the needs of the imperial family demand it, basically. And so um
Well, and then they,
he's having to play this game, this give and take, because here's someone who has their own agenda, has their own needs, has their own checklist, and their own just mass of people underneath them. And I've got to kind of navigate these waters here of I don't want to I can't make him defensive because then I won't get what I need. But my pride also, not just my personal pride, but the pride of my position won't let me be too subservient here because then he won't respect me.
mhm. And then you got to balance that with still being a master of your craft.
Yes.
So that takes a lot of attention, by the way. If
Because
you, yeah.
yeah, that's a great point because in the end, once all the politics are done, he's still a warrior. He still has to be on the battlefield directing other warriors and potentially engaging and fighting himself. All right. Um I also like that he is able to kind of figure Matt out here. Um but I like the way Jordan sets it up that it's not just that this guy is a really smart tactically and strategically and politically, but it's also because he's thinking in a way that this other general isn't and can't, because um his goal and his needs are very different than what this guy is doing, because this guy is basically looking at Matt as a peer and he's not. And it's not just because Matt is so skilled, he's above everybody else. It's that he's not a peer. Matt's not a peer because Matt's not playing the same game.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's uh this guy is playing chess because that's what a good general is doing. All
Matt's
right.
playing poker.
Matt's playing snakes and foxes
Yeah, snakes and foxes. Yeah.
because you have to cheat to win. So that's where I was going is Matt's playing snakes and foxes because he's cheating. He is cheating to win. And so this guy is basically, let me put myself in this guy's shoes. And this is what I would do if I was across the border in one of these opposing countries and one of these opposing militaries. This is what I would be doing, and this is why I would be doing it. And let me extrapolate from there. So it's not that he's dumb; it's just that he's working because his assumptions, his rationale, or not his assumption, his rationale is very correct. His rationale is very intelligent. It's yeah, that this is what's going on. This is how I need to react. This is how we are going to counter this move, but it's all based on the assumption that this is why this move is happening in the first place. Oh, and then we get a chapter of Elaine, which we'll skip because we've already talked about it and I don't care.
I was just looking up who the original quotation is from so I can get it right. John Lilly, all's fair in love and war. So he's not cheating. All's fair in love and war.
Yeah.
And this is what we get out of Matt is he's the lover and the fighter.
Mm-hmm. Um. So then we get a little break there with Elaine and
Yeah,
ultimately
and
wrapping that up, and
she's
nobody
actually
cares.
uh to your point about her not having reflection, but also she's just straight up bitchy in that chapter.
Which again would work better and would be fine if she had been contrite when it mattered with her people, because you fully understand, you should sympathize with Elaine here, because she's having to play, for the same reason that you sympathize with Furyk here in the previous chapter, is he's having to play politics when the fate of the empire is literally at stake, but he can't tell anyone that, because he can't tell anyone that the daughter of the Nine Moons has been kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
So the fate of the empire is in my hands, but I can't tell anyone that, and I'm having to deal with these petty politics that ultimately don't matter. Same thing with Elaine here in this chapter is the last battle is coming. I've just secured the throne when I shouldn't have had to, because this wasn't a true succession, because I am the daughter of the eldest daughter of the previous queen. So one, I shouldn't have had to deal with the succession. Two, we need to stop this because the last battle is coming, but you can't.
Yeah, but Jordan took care of that because Morgase left her position.
Mm,
This is a real succession because Morgase left her position. But also this is a place where Jordan's setup actually did pay off because we always knew Dylan was important.
mm,
And had she not had a moment to finish this book out, it would have been like the Aram story.
mm.
And the fact that she actually is why everything kind of all the pieces are there. You have Elaine in her little spot. You have all the rebels, theoretical rebels, even though it is a true succession. And then there's no click in place without Dylan.
So you know what? That's a good point, and maybe we shouldn't move on too quick here, even though I want to get to the Matt stuff because it's the most fun. Is that the only place you see real contrition and change from Elaine is when she realizes that the moment where she's poisoned and Dylan tries to save her, and stands in the way just long enough for real help to come, and she realizes I don't have to be suspicious of her
Put
anymore.
real help in quotes because we it turns out to be a setup, but
Right, right. But um she actually admits to being wrong and then changes her behavior. And there's a part of me that wonders if that was where Jordan was
makes
trying to
makes me
keep
wonder
Elaine
how
more
many people in that
sympathetic.
situation were FBI informants. That's all I want to know.
I disavow everything that my partner has said here. I love the FBI and the CIA. You're doing great work for America. Anyway,
Yeah, we're already on a list. Don't worry.
um, oh geez, that reminds me of something that we're gonna have to talk about Wednesday, which is apparently, with the stroke of a pen, Biden has created a secret court that is not accountable to anyone and no one knows about. I'm sure nothing will go wrong there. Speaking of secrets,
Everybody get out and
uh,
vote.
I'm wondering if that is where Jordan was going, and where the sympathy for Elaine was supposed to come from is Dylan, because she is the most human around her. She genuinely changes her mind and changes her behavior with regards to Dylan, and really leans on her in a way that she should be leaning on Brigitte and doesn't.
Which makes you because then after this chapter, her part in the whole thing just kind of dies.
Exactly. She kind of disappears after
Yeah, you
this.
almost wish she would have got some place of stewardship or whatever. She's taking care of Camelin while Elaine goes to the last battle, or she's the representative to something at the last battle,
Hmm.
to one of
Hmm.
the meetings, or some form of honor for what
Oh,
she
I
did
would
to
have. You know
Morgus.
what? I just had this random thought. I would have loved to see her in the Sanchin court as Elaine's ambassador representative to the
Yeah, that would
Sanchin,
have been awesome.
and
Yeah.
and her dealing with that hierarchy, that culture, and having to navigate that and spar with Tawan, basically verbally spar with Tawan. That would have been pretty awesome. Under an oak. All right. So we stick with Furyk as the point of view here, and I love how he found this and what his plan is going into this, and then ultimately his plan is pointless because he doesn't actually know what's going on. To that point, um, page 729, Lord, this is inside Furyk's head. Lord Matt, who under the light was Lord Matt? Because because he has convinced himself that well, and in part thanks to the searcher, and not it's funny to me how much and this is what Leidwin's shipless and Bale Doobie Doobie Doo Doman, this is what they figure out, which is, oh my gosh, it's hilarious and terrifying how much the searcher gets right and yet how wrong he is.
Mm-hmm.
That he thinks Tom Marilyn is the string puller here, that he's the leader, and you know what? That's not wholly illogical.
Well, it's a game theoretical thing too, because we just get this point of view and how competent, as you just praised, Karede is,
Mm-hmm.
but he's got a signal error.
Mm.
He's completely competent, but he still has a signal error.
That's a good point. In much the same way that the
And so
previous
how
general,
does he respond?
yeah,
Does he play fair the next game, or does he deceive? Which is in game theory, the forgiving tit for tat will play fair one more time to check the signal error to see if it was real or not. Whereas the straight up tit for tat would immediately deceive. And so you see where does Karede play into this?
mm-hmm.
Or is he Friedman that automatically deceives from then on out after the signal error, after the first deception? Well, if it's a signal error, then you're destroying a good relationship.
um, You know, that's a great point because almost immediately, so the bottom of page 730 here, almost immediately things start going wrong because things aren't what he thinks they are. And he adapts and reacts very coolly. He never loses his composure, you know, in kind of we see kind of in the back of his mind that he is making contingencies of, all right, if everything goes horribly wrong, here's what I'm going to have to do. But um ultimately his primary goal here is Tawan. And so when she rides up, he's like, okay, there's the person I care about. There's the whole reason I'm doing this. Now let me focus on that and then figure out how I get her out of here. Because bottom of page 730, Tom de Levind said, this is Furik Karede. He wants to talk to the man who calls himself Tom Marilyn. With me, the lean white haired man said, rising awkwardly. His right leg appeared slightly stiff. An old battle injury, perhaps? Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yes.
Not in the way you're thinking, poor Tom. But I don't call myself Tom Marilyn. It's my name. Though I'm surprised you know it. What do you want of me? And then he's, uh he spins this tale of, you know, hey, you've done a great job, but surely you can see that you're doomed. And yeah, I know more than you think you know. So you have a lot less troops than you're blustering. And um, uh, oh, even before we get there though, um, Jolene yet again. Um, you know, I just had this thought that Jolene is a great counterpoint to Elaine because Jolene is an imperious boss bitch trying to order everyone around who never really learns her lesson. But it works. It's not as egregious, it's not as annoying as Elaine because her failures are never as dire as Elaine's failure. I mean, we just got done ranting about how Elaine led led 600 men to their death and didn't bat an eye because of her poor decisions. Jolene's poor decisions are never anything close to that. So instead, it's rather comic relief that she keeps insisting that she's the boss and she knows what's going on. Which here, they write up and they recognize that the Domine that's being held by the Soldam is a former Aes Sedai, and it's the one that Tuan nursed back to health, basically, and she's now super Stockholm syndrome and wholly devoted to Tawan, and the others who have been under the leash have tried to explain to her, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, and she refuses to see it. And now
Mm-hmm.
she's slapped in the face with it, and yet she's still, you know, little Miss Boss Bitch. Um, but the reason it works with Jolene is because she's not really the boss. Matt is, and others are. Tawan is, and even to an extent, Satal and the other Aes Sedai are more bosses than she is, because they don't let themselves be cowed by her.
There's little
Uh,
things, subtle little things in there. Uh, when Matt rides up and jumps off his horse, I think it's important to see the language Jordan uses here
hmm,
because he makes it very clear that Karede understands horses.
hmm,
He's dismissing Matt, but he makes a point to talk about the deep chest that he of the horse and the broad nose,
that's a good point.
and it's just a little thing thrown in there that Jordan puts in there that you're like it gives weight to the characters.
That
And Karede is
that
somebody
yeah.
we very shortly have to have a lot of weight about.
No, no, that's a great point, because what does he think about Matt is, this is the top of page 732, is that made him, referring to Matt, the one everyone called Tylan's toy, as if being the queen's plaything were the most important feature of him. Likely it was, because so far as he knows about Matt, yeah, that's all, that's what he is. That's all there is to him. That which is why he's not a dummy, he is just in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Um
And then you have Matt badassing as Matt. Yep, you tried to channel at me. I know it.
Knock it
Release my
off.
people. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to work on me.
They let go, now you let go. All right, now let's talk. And then I will say that you know he's not a perfect badass, because even after all this, Karede still is, after all this, bottom of page 732, he's still talking to Tom, General Marilyn. Wait, what? And this is where he goes into the, you fought a great campaign, but they know what you're up to now, and you're doomed. Here, let me help you. I'll make a deal with you. Give me the High Lady, and I won't, hold pin you down with my troops, waiting for General Chissen to get to you. And Maryland stroked one of his white mustaches with a long finger. He seemed to hide a smile. I fear you have mistaken me, Banner General Karede. I am a gleeman, a position higher than a court bard to be sure, but no general. The man you want is Lord Metram Cawthon. Karede frowned. Tylan's toy was the general? Were they playing a game with him?
Well, but think of all the signals. Okay, what I say, I use the word signal error. He's got the seeker thinking Tom is the guy who he got his information from. He he's got the information of Tylen's toy that he's going on. And remember, Matt's young. We're pushing 21 right now.
It's a good point.
Matt looks like a little he has no facial hair. He's young. He's wearing this weird hat.
He's wiredy.
Yeah, he's skinny. He makes off comments even in this little situation. It's there's so many things for Karede to be like that's not the guy.
Mm-hmm,
Well,
mm-hmm,
especially since Kareed's a successful general himself. He knows how long he had to take to learn what he's done. He knows experience matters. What he doesn't know is the thing that we only know as readers that almost nobody else. I don't think anybody in this
mm-hmm,
room knows in this area this situation knows. Matt's got the experience of hundreds of dead people in his head.
mm-hmm.
And that's the thing nobody knows. And that's the only thing that changes everything. So if you can't know that, then you have to stick with your heuristic of the old man is the general. The old man that has been called the fox before.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Because it
again,
wasn't that part of the Seeker's intelligence that he knew he was the something
yes,
fox. Yeah.
Tom, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That somehow he had figured out from whispers and intelligence that he had kind of figured out what Tom used to be, which was a court bard and maybe spy master of Andor. Um, but Kured's, to his credit, I love the way he reacts when he gets totally blindsided by Matt, which is so the middle of page 733. You have about 100 men, Death Watch guards, and maybe 20 gardeners, Cawthon said calmly. From what I hear, that could make an even fight against 5 times their number for most soldiers. But the band aren't most soldiers, and I have a sight more than 600. As for Chissen, if that's the fellow who pulled back through the Narrows, even if he has figured out what I was up to, he couldn't get back in less than 5 days. My scouts' last reports had him pushing southwest along the Ibudar Road as fast as he could march. The real question is this, though. So I love the double whammy here of not only does he fully know, have his scouts fully scouted you and know what's going on, and your bluff here is totally not going to work. That's blindside number one. But now comes the big blindside, which is, can you get Tawan to the Teresian Palace safely? Karede felt as if Hartha, the head gardener, Ogier, had kicked him in the belly, and not only because the man had used the lady's name so casually. You mean to let me take her away? He said incredulously. If she trusts you, if you can get her back to the palace safely, she's in danger till she reaches that. In case you don't know it, your whole bloody, ever victorious flaming army is ready to slit her throat or bash in her head with a rock. I know, Karede said more calmly than he felt. And again, going through his mind, he's trying to figure out how all of this pieces together with what he thought he knew. Why would this man just release the High Lady after the White Tower had gone to all the trouble of kidnapping her? Why after fighting that short, bloody campaign? Um, one of the reasons this whole climax is one of my favorite scenes is because of all these character moments. And there's another great character moment here for Tawan, which is the top of page 734. Karede says, of course, the Death Watch will die to the last man to protect her. Not so fast, Cawthon turned toward the High Lady. Tawan, do you trust this man to see you safe to the palace in Ibudar? Karede felt an impulse to wince. General and lord the man might be, but he had no right to use the High Lady's name, so I trust the Death Watch guards with my life, the High Lady replied calmly, and him more than any other. She favored Karede with a smile. Even as a child, smiles from her had been rare. Do you by any chance still have my doll, Banner General Karede? So not only does she remember, but she makes a point to connect it to him and
Hmm.
let him know, I still remember you and what you did for me. So a great character moment there leading up to um Matrim Cawthon is my husband, the High Lady said in a loud, clear voice. Everyone froze where they stood. Matrim Cawthon is my husband. Karede felt as if Hartha had kicked him again. No, not Hartha. Aldazar. I don't remember who that is. What madness was this? Cawthon looked like a man watching an arrow fly towards his face, knowing he had no chance to dodge. Bloody Matrim Cawthon is my husband. That is the wording you used, is it not? This had to be a fever dream.
And that's why his storyline is so fun because we get it through somebody else's eyes that is complete seriousness,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and it ends up funny as hell
Exactly.
through the through
Yeah.
the ultra serious person's eyes. It's funny.
That that's why the straight man is the unsung hero of comedy, because the straight man is what lets the comedy land so well. And he is the perfect straight man for this instance. Um, but then, we flip and I said last previously, or as we started, that one of the problems with Perrin's storyline is nothing had a chance to breathe. Um, you had never had a chance to absorb anything. Same thing happens here, but for some reason it works better. And I think it works better because it hasn't been a slog. Every moment has really been valuable. It's, one of the reasons football is considered, such a huge sport and why people are so passionate about it is because you only have 17 games now because the NFL, I hate it. 17 games and that's it. You have 162, I think, in baseball. You have, what is it in basketball, around 100 or close to it in the regular season. Same thing with hockey. Uh, so every game matters. Every time you see Matt in this buildup, even in Crossroads, we talked about this, that Crossroads is a little bit of a meh book. The redemption to Crossroads for me was Matt's chapters because stuff is actually happening. You are learning about Tuan. You are learning about the Sanshin. You are learning about the Domine, and it's all interesting stuff. Not as good as what happens in Winter's Heart, uh, or what happens here, but it's not nothing. And so you have been building this up and building this up and building this up, and now when it crescendos, it lands. And so you have these beats that are working through here, and now you get another one after as Karede says, he felt like he'd been kicked in the gut. That's how the reader has to feel here too. But now you get another great moment where Matt says, no, 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 hold on a second here. I'm not just going to go along with this. Uh, it took a minute before Matt could speak. Now switching back to his point of view, which is perfect here in this moment. Burn him. It seemed to take a bloody hour before he could move. When he could, he snatched off his hat, strode to Tuan, and seized the razor's bridle. She looked down at him, cool as any queen on a bloody throne. All those battles with the flaming dice rattling in his head, all those skirmishes and raids, and they had to stop when she said a few words. Well, at least this time he knew what had happened. That was bloody fateful for Matt Bloody Coffin. Why? I mean, I knew you were going to do it sooner or later, but why now? I like you, maybe more than like you, and I enjoy kissing you, he thought. Kermit grunted. But you haven't behaved like a woman in love. You're ice half the time and spend most of the rest digging under my skin. Um, it's such a great human moment of no, hold on a second. Not only am I not going to get caught up in this political crap that I hate, but I'm not letting you do this if you're just doing it, if you're not doing it for reasons that matter, if you're not doing it for reasons that are good and noble, which to him is love, which is what he says here is, as much fun as he likes to have as a single guy, I'm not getting married if I don't love the woman. So why are you doing this? Because you're not acting like a woman courting. You're not acting like a woman in love. So we're not doing this if this isn't real. Which speaks to Matt on a personal, because we've seen Matt the ne'er-do-well, Matt the guy that Nynaeve and Elaine look at sideways because he's a playa and they don't like that. Well, it's the same thing as Matt the hero, that he's going to shout, I'm not coming to save you, and then he's going to look at Julian and say, well, are you coming or not? We got to go save them. So he's going to shout all he wants that I'm not doing this, but then he's going to do it because he is the big damn hero, even if he doesn't want to admit it. Same thing here. As much as he enjoys dancing and canoodling with random tavern wenches, when it comes down to real relationship, he's not doing it just for the fun of it, which says a hell of a lot about him as a person, which is why he works so well as a character and why he is, you know, why this works. And who the hell is Matt in the series? I didn't want to bring it back to that, but who the hell are any of them in the series? I don't know. And in the Prime series, I don't know who any of these people are as people.
Matt's a hero of the Horn. I was a hero all along, remember? That scene, this
Cool.
is my place. I'm a hero of the Horn.
Cool story, bro, but who are you when no one's watching?
Yeah,
You know,
that,
that's the I don't know who first said it, but character is who you are when no one is watching. You know, character is who you are if no one's watching and you could steal this thing, but you don't because it's not right. That's Matt. Is you know that's these characters. You have to have a sense of who these people are when we're not looking at them. I know who Matt is even when we're not in a Matt chapter.
yeah, and this is I don't know how to write this. And I wouldn't know how to write this book. I wouldn't know how to write a show version of this book. But here's the critique, and someone who's a better writer can take this critique and work with it. Matt being the horn sounder, Matt being the general, Matt being all of these, the trickster, everything, were all bits and pieces of his character uh, from a personality standpoint. Matt being the romantic is actually part of his character. Yeah, he runs away from everything but the thing, right? But true love. He's always had reserved in his mind, I'm afraid of true love, which is actually how you should be.
Hmm.
You should be afraid of it because that's going to make you find the right thing. Otherwise, you're that person that bounces from relationship to relationship to relationship because you think you know what it is, right? He is that character through and through, and that makes this believable. The show tried to throw you off the scent, throw red herrings about Matt the whole time that he's got darkness in him. He's this, he's that. And then all of a sudden we have a moment. I'm a hero of the Horn. Look at me. There's no continuity there. It was just trying to throw you off to make
Oh,
you
geez. You know what? I hadn't even thought about that. It's because to these woke morons, the ones we were talking about when we were ranting about the Roland storyline, you're
it's trying to be M. Night Shyamalan with everything you
no, no, no,
do.
no, no. I think it's worse than that. Your identity is who you are. And by identity, these people mean your characteristics. So
But also how you feel in the moment.
so we had all these implications. Ooh, who is this Matt guy? Is he maybe a bad guy? Is he maybe not a hero like these other people are? And then all of a sudden, oh no, I'm a hero. I'm a hero of the Horn, so I'm a hero. It's it's the reason why every strong female character now is a Mary Sue. It's because by virtue of being a woman to these people, you have already suffered and struggled. Therefore, you are already a hero.
Well, and there's also a message that's kind of been creeping in for a long time is that you only have to believe in yourself. And at that moment, he started to believe in himself. He didn't believe in himself before that.
Yeah.
Matt never believes in himself. We're here. He is a successful general. He has toppled multiple regimes. He has come out of darkness. He has done all of these things. He has wooed the girl who's impossible.
Mm.
And he's still like, what the hell am I doing here? And that's why we love him. That's what makes him, very uh relatable. Whereas you just gotta believe. That's the you can be anything you want if you put your mind to
You
it
know, that's a
mindset.
great point. And let's go back to the beginning of Matt as a character for me, which is his fight,
Badgers.
his. So as I've said before, when we first meet Matt, we don't know him very long before he's corrupted by the dagger. So we don't really get to know Matt himself, Matt without the influence of some outside force, which is the dagger in the last two-thirds of Eye of the World and all of the Great Hunt, until the Dragon Reborn when he's cured. And one of the first things we see him do, one of the first big moments that really sticks with you through the whole series, is this fight against Goblin and Gallad. Even in that, it's he was kind of pushed into it by pride. And you see, because it's from his point of view, he's sitting there going, what the hell am I doing, you stupid moron?
Well, not only that, so pushed into it by pride. I'm not going to say it's pride. He was pushed into it by his little bit of weakness for some coin.
You know what? No,
He saw an opportunity and he took it.
It was
He is the entrepreneur.
it was pride on both sides. It was his pride of, I'm not going to let you talk down to me like that, and it was the pride of Galwin and Galad, kind of not meaning to, but looking down on him. And they in their pride kind of pushed him into it as well,
Hmm.
and they
Well,
needed to be taken down a peg.
but also he was in the perfect Matt situation. I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
They've got practice swords. If they beat me, I lose what it was, a silver or something like that, or silver mark. Uh, so he saw an opportunity. He said, "I've got very little to lose," and that's been his storyline from here on out.
You know, I was just glancing down because I was looking for something to move us along, and it's a small thing, but the small things are why Jordan works, which is um all right, so back to the, what started this tangent in the first place, which was Matt and true love, and love, Tuan sounded surprised. Perhaps we will come to love one another, matron, but I have always known I would marry to serve the Empire. What do you mean you knew I was going to speak the words? So lots of layers there, and I love the Matt being Matt of call me Matt. Only his mother had ever called him Matron when he was in trouble, and his sisters when they were carrying tales to get him in trouble. And I love that the little moment here of Matt being Matt of call me Matt. I don't like that name. Nobody calls me that. And then Tawad's responsive, your name is Matron. Like, I'm gonna call you that because that's your name. I
Yeah,
don't care what
but
you want to be
also
called.
we get depth with that because of the whole situation with Leolwyn, Geonin becoming Leolwyn,
Mm,
how much
mm.
names matter to the Shanshan.
I hadn't thought about that before.
Yeah, that there's depth to that from her, and Matt's not privy to that because he was only partially part of that conversation. He doesn't understand what names mean to the Shanshan. A name is
Mm.
like something huge. In fact, we get no, I'm not going to spoil. Let me take a pause real quick.
All right, so on that note, and kind of trying to push forward to get to the end here because we got stuff we got to go do is um once again I love the way that Jordan wraps this up by kind of, well, not kind of, but by showing us from someone else's perspective, because the chapter ends by switching to Tawan's point of view, and it's her and Karede riding away after this discovery that there's this giant army coming to kill Tawan, and Matt's gonna be Matt and be the big damn hero and uh, get in the way of this army, so Tawan can get away. Um, and in that really short, it's like less than a page, is where is it where he says at the very end of the chapter on 738. What do you make of him? She asked Karede. It is not my place to make judgments. Blah blah blah. But Tawan kind of presses him, and a good general, high lady, he replied without hesitation. Brave, but not overly brave. He won't get himself killed just to show how brave he is, I think. And he is adaptable, a man of many layers. And this is really to me kind of the great period at the end of this whole arc of the daughter of the nine moons that's been going on since book 4 of who the heck is she and what's going to happen when Matt finally meets her is, and if you will forgive me, high lady, a man in love with you. I saw how he looked at you, and it's very hard to have a mentor when you're this highly placed and everyone is in service to you, and Tawan has a little bit of that with Seleucia, who is free to speak around her more so than anyone else, and that's because we saw when we first met him that uh we've kind of talked about this before, but widowers get married, remarried a lot more readily than widows. And Furyk is a widower who never remarried because he was that attached to his wife. And he still feels kind of, when someone brings it up when we first meet him, he still feels the pain of the loss of his wife. So this is someone who would know, would clearly, obviously, and again, nothing happens by accident in Jordan's writing because it's so layered. He set that up books ago. And now we have a payoff here that you weren't expecting and that you maybe didn't notice consciously. Is this guy knows what it is to find true love, and now he's telling her, you may not realize it, but you found it, at least on his part.
Yeah, and we finish with even more on what we were just talking about. She wants the razor for her hair. And he's like, well, it's not tactically good, but if I die as who I am. That's the depth of the name. She's going to die as
Mm,
Tuan, the daughter of the Nine Moons. You're Matrim. You are Matrim Cawthon.
mm.
You die as you are. That's how deep it is to them. The name matters, the appearance matters, all the little things that identify you, which you talk about identity. This is a culture steeped in identity. How long your fingernails are matters.
Mm.
How your hair looks, what if you wear a veil or if you don't wear a veil.
That is a great point, and
And that's
skips
what
us
Matt's
through.
freeing her from. Because she is allowed to think as herself for the first time. In fact, she says in her little superstitious, beware the man that makes ravens fly, for he will marry you and carry you away. Beware the man that remembers Hawkwing's face, for he will marry you and set you free.
Mm.
She was chained by traditions.
And she is thinking of it as Matt's letting her go.
Mm-hmm.
I was his prisoner, and now he's letting me go because we're married and I'm going off. She seems to be thinking of it purely on the surface level, but you're right. I think there's more to it. I think you're right there, and that is something we'll get into in the last three books here. And Sanderson has admitted he didn't write Matt very well, and that's one of the disappointments. It's not just that Matt, the character, isn't who he was during the series. It's that we don't get enough of those moments with him and Tuan. We don't really get to see how Matt has changed her and thus changed the whole Sanshin Empire without either of them really realizing it. And you only kind of get the slightest hints of that. And it jumps us through another great, battle chapter on Jordan's part, the very last chapter. But the way it ends is such a great character moment because that's who he is, which is Matt getting annoyed that this Kared's second in command keeps calling him, highness and bowing down to him. And look, would you stop calling me that? This is page 750, the very end of the last chapter. Um, my name is Matt. After today, I'd say you have a right to use it. Um, and he means that, and he has at least some understanding of what that means to the Sanshin. So he really means that, and that should have an impact on this guy. But instead, uh, the stone mask crumpled in astonishment. I could not do that, Highness, he said in a scandalized tones. When she married you, you became Prince of the Ravens. To speak your name would lower my eyes forever. Matt took off his head and scrubbed his fingers through his hair. He had told everyone who would listen that he did not like nobles, did not want to be one, and he had meant it. He still meant it. And now he bloody was one. He did the only thing he could. He laughed until his sides ached. Not only is he a noble, he's basically the second most powerful noble in the world, third if you count the Dragon Reborn as a noble title, but still, I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find one more powerful.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm curious now, and maybe it's because the influx of so much Edgar Allan Poe lore in a lot of series these days. I wonder if there's something there with Matt and the Prince of Ravens.
Mm.
I'm gonna have to dive deeper on that. It may be a fool's errand, but at least it's good poetry.
So, last thought on the epilogue. I find this very interesting. That the epilogue is one of the longer epilogues in the whole series, and it's split into two parts. The first several pages are Tuwan showing back up in Ibudar, the Tarisan Palace, and we finally get the downfall of Suroth. Not necessarily for the reasons we should, because she is a dark friend, but they don't know that. But it still ends up basically in the same place, that she is done for, and she is no longer going to be able to exert control as a dark friend. But then he cuts to the Black Tower. So I love that we have that kind of triumphal moment over the dark, but now we switch to the Black Tower, and we see Pavara and her group have shown up to do what they were talking about last book, and we want to take Ashamana's warders, and Taim's response. Pavar, very well. Pavar blinked in spite of herself. Very well. She must have misunderstood him. He could not have been convinced so easily. Taim's eyes seemed to bore into her head. He spread his hands, and it was a mocking gesture. What would you have me say? Fair is fair, equal shares? Accept very well and ask who you will let bond them. Besides, you must remember the old saying, let the Lord of Chaos rule. The chamber erupted with men's laughter. Pavara had never heard any saying like that. The laughter made the hair on the back of her neck try and stand, which we were actually talking about Wednesday, that's a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
I love you know, the dichotomy there of Matt and Tuwan even accidentally triumphing over the dark in a pretty major way. Because Suroth was a very highly placed dark friend, and in position to, had Tuwan been taken out of the picture, take over the most powerful known military force in the world, which is the Sanshan Empire. And their army and their domine and all the things they have going for them would have been a tool of the dark. And Tawan and Matt were able to take that down. Now we shift over to the Black Tower, which Logain told Rand, you need to pay attention to this, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not. And this is one of the most powerful forces in the world. And now, just in case you didn't figure it out before then, Jordan is saying, oh yeah, he's totally a dark friend. How did you not know this by now? Let the Lord of
Well,
Chaos rule.
but it gives you a nuanced insight into previous events because Taim was completely genuine in his lamentations about the assassination attempt on Rand.
Mm,
He's following the original plan. Let the Lord of Chaos rule
that's a good point.
by facilitating Rand being ever more crazy. He was actually truly disappointed that there was an assassination attempt, and he was
Yeah.
truly trying to figure out what went wrong. And little did we know, Dashiva, Arengar was Asengar.
Yes.
Asengar was, yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
Asengar, Aganor, excuse me. Aganor was, a Forsaken in my own ranks that I didn't even know about, and I still don't know about.
Mm,
So he truly was genuine with his dealings with Rand, trying to keep him alive, but he's also trying to drive him crazy.
good point. All right.
Right?
Uh,
Spoiler territory, if we have any.
let me see. I hadn't taken any notes.
Let me look at the comments again. Did we
Yeah, I
have
was
any
just
that
pulling
were
those up.
spoilers? Okay, yeah, I consider the battle in the tower as Egwene's shining moment. Yeah, so y'all are in agreement there, and I have
Mhm.
to admit that it's a pretty good moment for her, although I don't like the premise behind it. I think I'm still with the she should have listened to Brian and things would have been over earlier. But we're in spoiler territory. That might have set them up for being destroyed by the Shanshan. Uh, unless you take the argument that the fraction in the tower was what set it up. But uh, it would at least put everybody in one place for the attack.
Mm.
And yeah, so the series setting perhaps is a thing with Jordan and Sanderson. Yeah, we're gonna analyze that to no end because we're switching authors now. Uh, Perrin, one step forward, two steps back. It's a yo-yo, and you want to see him get down the road. Well, it even gets worse because I actually have a meme for that coming up because we're probably going to need it. Let me bring it up here. And this is the truth right here. He says he loves Perrin and he thought he wrote Perrin well, but to me, this is the result that came out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in his defense, though, as we've kind of been griping about the past several books, is Jordan kind of forgot about it too, or if not forgot about it, thought he needed to backtrack to create, you know, conflict, drama, whatever.
I thought that up until we started filming this episode and I started formulating the we were supposed to not like Perrin
Mm,
for a little bit. And I think the delivery wasn't perfect, but now that I kind of feel like I have an idea of what he was trying to do, I'm like, oh,
yeah,
okay, that makes a little bit of sense now. Uh, again, delivery wasn't great, but we've been talking since we started this book. Yo, what's up? We've been starting since we talked how he might have been a little rushed because of his medical
yeah.
issues, or even just not in the right mind. I could tell you just from this last month how much medication can throw you off.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
No,
So
yeah, yeah, and I recall at the time that he was hoping and hopeful that his numbers were good enough that he was going to be able to finish the series, and that at the in the lead up to Knife of Dreams, there was a lot of talk that this is going to set up the final book, and I'm going to be able to finish it in one more book. Um,
yeah, and then
and
Matt
and
and
of course he
Tuan
wasn't.
cannot connect with Perrin simply because Ty Lee and her Shanjin forces. Sarath has made a good false case against Tuan, and it won't be not just a good false case, a bounty, as we found out in this last chapter,
Mhm.
right? And I didn't want to address that till the end because we just found out about it in this last chapter.
Well, but they are so close though, geographically speaking, that I kind of what I was
You
talking
could have
about,
had a compelling story where all of it came together to rescue
and
Tuan.
yes, that um
Because you kind of get the idea that Tylee is suspicious of Sarath as well.
yeah.
She just can't openly say it because blood and not blood, you know?
Yeah, there is that. Or what I was leaning more towards when we were talking about that is that rather than what happens next, rather than what happens in the next book, when after Perrin deals with Malden and after Matt deals with uh Suros dude there, that they meet up
Yeah, and
rather
especially
than
it
still
just
going.
seems, yeah, it
Basically
seems
they're
far-fetched that
going
two battles
in
that
parallel
size,
roads. Yeah,
yeah, it just seems far-fetched that two battles that size, that close to each other would go unnoticed by each other. Especially
exactly.
since Perrin's forces have a lot of Rakan.
That's a
They
good
have
point.
they
That
have
was the whole point of
scouts.
them going there, is
Yeah,
she
they have
wanted
scouts
scouts.
checking all directions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so my thinking was when I was talking about that is that I was talking about the next book, which I'm brain farting on the name of.
Gathering the Gathering Storm.
Gathering Storm.
Yeah.
Yeah. They Matt and Perrin spend so long on
Another
a
horrible cover
parallel route.
art
They're
too. But
both they both end up heading towards Camelin. And I knew they weren't that far apart, but until you brought up the bat, I didn't realize how close they were. They're both going towards Camelin and very, very slowly getting closer together. Just freaking have them meet up so we can have that moment and have them travel together. We could have bypassed a lot of needless silliness that I don't think works. And we could have, really sat in that moment longer of, you know, Perrin as the guy who's been married for almost a year now, Matt, the guy that just got married, the two friends finally getting back together, and have that moment of, you know, well, crap, what is my life? What is life like now? What is going on? And it would have helped Perrin as well, because as I've said before, uh, you learn so much when you're coaching someone else, so much more than you ever learned when you were being coached. And
Hmm.
Perrin trying to coach his friend through what it's going to be like now that you're a married man could have and would have helped him rebuild that relationship that has become strained because they were separated for so long under such difficult circumstances.
So we've got Matt would be going through this gap, and Perrin would be right here, I would assume.
Mm-hmm.
The only way they don't, I just don't see. I'm looking for a scale. Do you see a scale on the screen?
No, I thought there was one here. There might be, but um,
I just don't see because we've got thousands of people dying here.
uh,
We've got thousands of people dying here. Channeling happening here at a huge level. Channeling happening here at a huge level. I, it, he should have at least had them further apart in his storyline. You would have to think like maybe the parent stuff happened more in Galen, closer to Johanna or whatever.
mm-hmm.
But or Matt had gone the opposite direction, south, when the pass in the Domana mountains were closed. The otherwise it's just a plot hole. Is it all it ends up to be? Which you can forgive Jordan over 14 books of notes
Yeah,
to something to that degree. But yeah, I understand from a story standpoint, the previous events had bearing over it. But to your point, yeah, it would have created a good binding moment for those people.
yeah,
Where what we got was a cartoon version of Matt going forward, and
yeah,
Perrin just regressing to, oh, am I a wolf or a person again?
yeah. Well, we'll delve into that more next time. I don't even remember how the book opens. So we'll see what happens when we get there next time as we start with the Gathering Storm.
Yeah, and I wanted to read in detail as we go forward. We'll see how successful I am because we had classes canceled because of our hard freeze here in Texas. Our nice sunny, yeah, 30 degrees, but I mean, I was outside in shorts and a t-shirt because it was nice and sunny and still.
Yep.
Uh, so I've got a lot on my plate school-wise going forward that I still don't have any direction on because we never met for classes. So trying to figure all that out, and I just looked ahead and it's a lot of reading. So we'll see how much I can squeeze in. I might have to skim unfortunately, because this would have been my first true reread of these last
Yeah.
three books.
Well,
Uh,
we'll see y'all Wednesday for the not so fun, and then hopefully we'll find a way to make Friday fun, but it's gonna be less fun than it has been.
yeah, Wednesday you wanted to talk about RFK.
Yeah.
Uh, my notes. I was like, oh, let me bring this up later. I made a comment about flashing earlier. My accidental flash when I was at the doctor having my booty checked out. Uh, so it was the PA and it was a lady, and I'm laying on my belly and she pulls my pants down to look at the
Giggity.
wound on my back and she's going through it. Well, I was going to exit facing away and pull up my pants, but she had pulled the drawer out that's on the table you're laying on, and I didn't know it. I didn't hear it come out. I didn't feel it come out or anything. So I go to turn to go away, except my knee hit the table, so I spun
Ow.
around and I'm facing her with my pants around my knees. And so I hope she didn't think I was trying to massage Watson her there and flash her. But yeah, we were full on Monty for a second. I was
How
like,
you
oh,
doing? How's it going? Yikes.
yeah, that wasn't on purpose. She played it cool. I played it cool. I pulled up my pants like nothing happened. But yeah. And then you said small things, and we were talking about Tuan. And did I ever tell you about when Jared and I took went out, and Ben had to come with me because he was too young to stay home alone at the time.
It
And
sounds
so,
disastrous.
and there were a bunch of us guys were there having sushi, and Ben was there, and we were teasing him about girls, and we're like, "So you got a girlfriend yet?" Blah 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 blah. All this whole talk, and somehow we got into the conversation. He's like, he says, "Yeah, I like small girls." We're like, "You like small girls?" He goes, "Yeah, I can pick them up." We're like, "You like to pick up girls? What do you do with girls you can pick up? You like small girls?" And he said, "And you could throw them down." I'm like, "What? You could throw them down like on a couch or something?" I was like, and so we just kept that going. So now every time any of us are all together, we just like, "Hey Ben, you like small girls?" He's just like, "Oh, Dad, ooh,
Well,
ooh."
he's like speaking from experience, he's not wrong. So anyway, let's
Yeah, says the guy.
close it
Says
out
the
with
guy
that.
who's married to the what 4 foot tall Vietnamese girl.
Hey, she hasn't been mistaken for a middle schooler in like 4 years.
Has she gone to the middle school in 4 years?
No.
Exactly. That's why she hasn't been mistaken for a middle schooler.
All right. Well, that's enough of that. So we'll see y'all next time.
All right. See you later.